Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move. And knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Quick question. When was the last time a display ad changed your mind? Now think about the last time a friend told you about something they loved. Different feeling, right? That's how podcast advertising works. A host who's built real trust with their audience talks about your brand in their own words, in their own voice. It doesn't interrupt the experience. It's part of it. With Acast, you can access the world's largest podcast marketplace. Choose the right shows, the right audiences, the right format. Then watch the data tell you it worked. You're not buying impressions. You're buying influence. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Oh, no.
I had sex yesterday with, I know, stop press, with someone that I see occasionally. And afterwards we were kind of like, you know, catching our breath and relaxing. And I was like, he was like, what did you do before? And I was like, I was watching a 3-part documentary about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh my God.
And their crimes.
Whole new world of foreplay.
I know. And then he goes, and then I was like, what about you? And he was like, I watched Kung Fu Panda.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
He said, the second one. And I haven't seen any of them, so I don't know what that means. But...
Well, I need to get watching both of these
yeah,
then.
Exactly.
You're listening to The Logbooks. These are the stories of our lives. We are Tash Walker.
And Adam Smith.
We're telling tales about history, politics, art, and LGBTQ+ life. What's the story?
Well, we are working on a project with doctors and dentists.
We are, yes.
And I thought it would be a good chance to kind of just mention that to listeners of the Logbooks, because there will be a podcast series coming later on in the year, or probably in early 2027.
I know, wow.
Yeah, which is crazy. But in the meantime, what we're doing is we're working with the Association of LGBTQ+ Doctors and Dentists, GLAD, they're called. And we are collecting loads and loads of interviews with doctors and dentists going back, whose memories go back to like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, of what it's like to be queer and doctor or dentist. So it's a fun project.
So interesting. I'm like really excited to start interviewing people and getting into those stories. And actually, as much as it is about history, there's someone that I'm really looking forward to interviewing, George, who is a younger medical student, but also trans. And we've had some really fascinating conversations about what it's like to be someone trying to access gender-affirming care while also being a medical student.
Yes. And there's one that I'm really keen to interview called Peter, who's a retired doctor, retired about 10 years ago, so he's quite elderly now, and he's built a ceramics shed in his back garden.
Oh my God,
and he's just been spending retirement doing ceramics.
Oh, so good. You know what? Let's have an ad break while I dream of that.
Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move. And knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state. You've got social dialed in. Search is doing its thing. So why do your marketing results look the same as 6 months ago? That's because you're fishing in the same pond as everyone else. Podcast listeners are a different audience entirely. More engaged, harder to reach through traditional channels, and ready to act when someone they trust makes a recommendation. We're Acast, and we put them right in front of you. Browse thousands of the world's leading podcasts, book host reads or run your own ads, and track every conversion in real time. Same skills you already have, brand new results. Acast. Acast.com/advertise.
Okay, Adam, it's your turn to bring a topic today. And I think it's going to be a really interesting one, but tell me.
I am serving second adolescence. to the podcast. So I guess I just wanted to talk about, second adolescence, which is this idea that comes out of some psychotherapy and some psychology and counselling field, people that work in that field, those who work with LGBTQ plus clients. And it's this idea that a lot of people who are LGBTQ plus, they go through their first adolescence, which is the kind of biological one that happens, when you're in your teenage years. And then if for one reason or another, to do with their gender identity or their sexuality, if they don't explore and experiment and have, allow feelings to flow around, expressing who they are in terms of their gender or like exploring romantic connections or having sex, then they go through their first adolescence without doing those things which other people do, cisgender and straight people do. And so then they have later on a second adolescence. And obviously, listeners might know that this is something that happened to me. I've talked about this a lot and written about it, that I, first really had sex when I was 29 and came out as gay at 29 and everything. And so there's this idea of second adolescence, and that's what I wanted to just talk about. So I thought the first kind of, I've got like 3 framings.
Okay, great.
3 different little segments to talk about.
Before you do that,
Yes.
It just reminds me of something that would happen a lot at Switchboard when I was a volunteer.
Right.
And it really resonates with me. So I'm really excited to hear what these framings are.
Yeah.
But just to sort of give a bit of context, that at Switchboard, I took calls from people who were coming out at 16, people who were coming out in their 60s, and people who were coming out in their 80s as well. And I love this idea of second adolescence and the queer time element to it, which is like, it doesn't matter what age you are. It's about understanding you and what your body's telling you. Yeah,
there's a couple of different terms for it. There's second adolescence, there's queer time, which you just said, which is also kind of from like the academic world a little bit. I think Halperin is the person connected to that, the researcher connected to that queer time idea. And then also gauge, which we've used as in your gay age, which is kind of like a more slangy term for it.
Yeah, actually, we've had so many conversations about that.
Yeah.
I remember meeting you and we had this chat where you were like, I'm basically a teenager. And I was like, I think I'm in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
We were both in our 30s.
Well into 30s. Exactly.
Okay, tell me about these framings.
Yeah, so I think the first one was about like what the research says and what therapists and psychotherapists and counselors and psychologists say about this. And I know you've had experience with therapy and you read a lot about this kind of stuff as well. So you'll bring in other things as well. There are framings like sex and love and romance are core dimensions of adolescence and adolescent development specifically, where you're kind of you're learning what your motivations are, what your emotional experiences are. You're doing social learning, like you're understanding how people interact with each other, how power works, and how people make decisions, and also your identity is forming as well. So these are like some of the core findings from lots of different people that have done research into this, and finding just how much sex, love and romance are the core dimensions of your like adolescent development in those ways.
Okay, already that makes me think, wow, there's so much going on at such a young age. But what we're talking about here, I suppose, is for a cis-het person. So how much more complicated is that for queer people?
Yeah, it is. Well, I want to come to queer people in a minute.
Okay.
And that's going to be my second framing.
Right, okay, so let's dig into this.
But I'm just thinking, for now, if we dig into, regardless of age, regardless of whether you do this when you're 15 or 25 or 85, the idea of, I guess we're talking about adolescence, so we are talking about the younger one, but it's just, the question is like, what early romantic and sexual experience is for. And for you, that early might be you're 15 or you might be 50 or 80. So your early romantic and sexual experience. So if I take myself as an example, I was reading some diaries that I wrote when I was...
Why have you not shown me these?
I know. We didn't put them in the book.
Oh my God, Adam.
I was rereading them. They are from, I guess I was about 31.
Oh, wow. I just want to read these so much.
And they are... it's funny because I look back at the people that I met, like around that time, including some people that became really good friends and who I'm still friends with now 10 years later. And there was some of them were people that I had sex with, like we met to like hook up or like maybe go on a couple of dates and then convert to friendship. And I look back at that now and thinking, oh yeah, that was nice. I met so-and-so in that period and we like hooked up a couple of times and then became friends. Yeah. And then I read these diaries and I'm like, oh, okay, I was like really trying to have something with this person and like really kind of hurt when it didn't happen. It didn't work out, or actually one person who hurt me, you know, not trying to hurt me, but just through kind of being shambolic at a party. Okay. After a conversation with me and then everything. So like it was kind of interesting to read those things and think, okay, so I was having some early romantic and sexual experiences. They were not in my biological adolescence when I was 15. They were in my second adolescence when I was 31. And so yeah, it just made me think of like, what are early romantic and sexual experiences for? And they teach you like who you are and how you expect people to behave, and also how susceptible you are to things like desire and things like having romantic feelings. Yeah, okay, wow. This is really interesting. And also like my heart goes out to you know, you in those diary entries, because it's so much feelings and also like hormones that are flying around that you're trying to like make sense of. For me, my understanding, I've been thinking about this a lot actually recently, like when did I feel like some kind of element of desire? And I go right the way back to, I think I'm about 10 or 11, and I'm at my friend Katie's house, and her big sister is like in the room next door, and I overhear her telling a story to her friends. She was like much older, about how she'd got drunk last night and they were giggling, and she had been kissing this guy and like was so drunk that she was sick in his mouth. And I remember feeling, I want to be that guy. No, that's so... And that is, I don't have a fetish for like the vomit or anything, but my feeling was so confused around that. And then obviously I had like mad amounts of shame and did not like acknowledge that at that age. I was also really young, and then around the same time I have this memory of being at a sleepover with some friends at Jane's house, and Jane saying, "Do you guys ever feel a heartbeat down there?" And I like immediately knew exactly what she meant. I was also raised Catholic, so there's that layer to add into all of this. And I just said, no, I don't feel that at all. And like completely shamed her and myself in it, because I think I knew my desire and my heartbeat down there was connected to women, not connected to like society. But if you had acted on either of those things, if you had tried to develop, like you were having sexual / romantic feelings for those other people that you mentioned in the story, and you were a biological adolescent, you're a teenager. And so... I was pre-adolescent at that point. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And, but then, I guess the interesting thing is like, you are having those you're having those attractions, let's say, and they are forming a part of who you are and how you relate to other people and how you find yourself relating to other people. And then you would go on to, you know, like within a couple of years, have like really intense romantic and sexual relations and attachments with people. And they are like forming a part of your identity. This is obviously happening in your context, within the context of shame, which we can talk about in a bit with the queer stuff. But it's just it's that kind of classic thing of like what like 99% of like high school dramas are about. It's like who fancies who wants to get with who, and all of that stuff. And it's all really early development stuff. Totally. And the difference is that I was doing that stuff and you weren't. And like I then became a teenager. And I did end up having kissing a girl and her becoming my first girlfriend, and that was around like 15, 16. Prior to that though, I was having sex with and making out with boys. And I had this feeling throughout that whole time. And I guess it's interesting to think about this in terms of what adolescence is for with those structures that you were talking about, is that I was trying to enact
romantic and sexual feelings, and I felt absolutely nothing, but I kept pushing my body to do it.
And I did it as well. Like, I didn't keep pushing. I did it. I had a girlfriend when I was at college doing my A-levels. I asked her out, and she said, yeah, and we went to a pub and had a drink. I don't know, probably orange juice. Anyway, and then we were like boyfriend and girl. I don't know whether we said boyfriend and girlfriend. I guess we did. We were like going out for a few months, and then we were going to be doing the sex, and but it sort of didn't really happen. Basically, I think we were both really petrified, and also, my desire wasn't there. I don't know about her, but I guess I experienced it enough to be like, oh, okay, that's not going to be the one for me, and so it confirmed. So this was a part of my development sexually and romantically, was that like, oh, this probably isn't the one. This is not my sexuality. So it kind of confirmed my sexuality as not, as being as
not
gay.
That.
As being gay. So then again, we'll come on to it, but like, then it's like, oh, okay, but then I'm not going to do that because I don't like that. I mean, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be seen as gay. I don't want to use that word. It's, my parents are not going to like it or whatever. And parents are actually really important because they also, your experience of your parents and the adults that you live with massively form your understanding of relationships. And we all know, don't we, people that repeat the same mistakes that their parents make in relationships. They learn behavior between their parents or between the parents and them that they then repeat in other relationships. And so it's another like really important part of like adolescent development is that relationship forming. The development, your identity and your kind of like emotional landscape forming within the context of your parents' relationship as well.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Also, like, I guess, that is really interesting, thinking about like my parents' relationship and how that impacted me, but not to go into that now. But one thing I did really feel, like you were like, this isn't working with this girl, I don't have my desire here. My reference point, which is so Tash Walker, was to be like, this is what people wrote songs and poetry about. Like, what the hell? Like, I have strong feelings and I'm getting nothing. And I was like making out with guys or having sex with them. I was like, is this it?
This is rubbish. There's a good quote here from a publication called Open Oregon, which is Sexual Development Through the Lifespan. That's the name of the kind of essay. Romantic relationships contribute to adolescence identity formation. And identity there doesn't only just mean like, am I LGBTQ plus or not? It's like, it's even deeper than that. It's like, who fully are you, right? So romantic relationships contribute to adolescence identity formation, changes in family and peer relationships, and emotional and behavioral adjustment. Furthermore, romantic relationships are centrally connected to adolescence emerging sexuality. So that's kind of summarizing what we talked about so far. And if I can go back to my teenage diary, sorry, not my teenage diary. I guess it was my teenage diary.
I think we should call it that.
My second adolescence diary when I was 31.
We should compare it to my teenage diaries.
Right. And there's a friend who I met at that time. We hooked up a few times. He's called Zach. And we kind of, it was the first person that I'd met. I was like, oh, I could actually imagine like something with him, dating, or something, whatever that would be like. I just didn't know. And I think I must have said something to him that I like wanted something with him. But it wasn't to be, and we converted to friendship. But through that time, he was very good at guiding me. We were both the same age, like 31. He was very good at like guiding us into the friendship, and that included saying things to me like, I'm really glad that you're in my life. I'm really glad that we met. And I think now, looking back, that he was able to say those things and transition us into a friendship, and we can talk about friendship, absolutely, because he had had similar experiences years ago for him, like maybe 10 years before, even though we were the same age, in his quote-unquote first normal adolescence, even though he was gay, but that he had just done things a lot earlier. So he'd probably fancied someone and they had let him down, and they said, no, we're not going to be together. And he might have been hurt by that. And he'd obviously thought, okay, if Adam's going through this, what's the way to guide him through this and to secure a friendship that we both do want? And it's to say things like, I'm really happy that you're in my life. And that like stuck with me as a thing that like he'd had earlier experience than I had, and then I was kind of benefiting from his ability to navigate that.
I love that a lot. And actually it makes me think about, so my first girlfriend, I was a teenager and I've had several relationships since then. And some of those relationships have been with people who I've never been the first person that they've been with, but they might have come out at 29 or 27 or later. And so my experience of being gay or queer is, 10 years more than theirs. And
exactly.
the impact of my first girlfriend on me, where she really treated me like shit, made me be able to sort of hold space for them and going through their journey later. And I think it's really important. And I'm friends with all of my exes, and the breakups are really hard and they have been difficult, but they're really important to me. And I think that is something that is, and I know we're sort of going off topic a little bit, but I think that in my experience, certainly, of queer relationships ending, there does seem to be a higher ability of people to remain friends as part of their future transition into another relationship.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Well, we can dig into the queer and LGBTQ plus experience more specifically.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because there's this like extra complication, basically. There's a quote that I got here from, it's an article called "The Second Adolescence of LGBTQ plus Adulthood" in Psychology Today. It was published on Psychology Today. We're going to put links to these things in the episode notes. And the author is Adam James Cohen, so another Adam. And the quote is, "Many LGBTQ plus adults in our post-coming out years find ourselves feeling stunted, underdeveloped, and behind in comparison to our cisgender heterosexual peers." And it's a very, very kind of simple statement, but I think it's the kind of thing that you say to a lot of queer people and that they'd recognize themselves or their friend like immediately in that, like that feeling of being stunted or underdeveloped. And actually you're like, you wouldn't want it to be. It sounds like quite negative, but like, you're like, no, actually that is what it is. That's the description.
It's interesting because I am really interested in that. I think that's a really good description. And I'm going to bring in something, because at the moment we've spoken about like me understanding my sexuality a lot younger and you coming to that a lot later in comparison to each other, which is 29 versus like 14, 15. And I have this like additional layer of something that's happened to me in terms of my understanding. And I'm only really thinking about it in the last like couple of years or so. And you bringing this to me today has made me reflect on it more just now while we're talking, which is around my like gender identity. Because my coming out in my teens and all of my teens and 20s was really tumultuous, and I never really understood like why I was finding it so hard. And what's happened to me in the last 5 or 6 years is almost like another adolescence, especially with sex, which is around like understanding my gender as well. And so that makes me feel a lot better because it makes me look back at my teen adolescence, which was my second adolescence, with a kind of framing that I still hadn't quite got to my third adolescence, if you like. So I just wanted to add that in.
Part of knowing that you have had or are having a second adolescence is that you are addressing the experiences of things that you missed and wounds that you created, wounds that you inflicted on other people or wounds that were inflicted upon you because of another person or because of the circumstance that happens in first adolescence. And like I haven't had the same experience there as you, but I think I have had that period of reflection. I guess it's ongoing, okay, well, what did I miss? What did I get wrong? What wounds did I what wounds did I inflict on other people, but what wounds did I endure myself? For me, it might be to do with my parents. It's one wound, I suppose. Like
I was
the way
ask,
that they
actually
rejected my sister, and then the way that I didn't I mean, and my parents are not fully to blame for me, like, not coming out and not having sex when I was a teenager. Like, there's also parts to do with my personality about that and other things, obviously, in society and everything. But I do think that, like, it's a wound that I carry that I didn't, that I didn't do things when I was a teenager. Like, and I even had, like, a gay friend, a really close friend who was gay. And there was even a moment where I kind of, like, felt like, oh, I might try and do something with him or speak to him or whatever, but I just didn't. So it's kind of carrying that missing conversation in that case, or the wound of, like, in my case, like, my parents rejecting my sister, and then that's damaging to happen in your family anyway, but then also it kind of, you know, silenced me and everything like that. So
yeah, and it makes me think about what you said earlier about your parents' relationship, and then how you then carry that within yourself. And actually what your parents did was silence your sexuality by their behaviour through a very clear rejection of your sister, which therefore made you repeat that. It's not your fault. And silence your own sexuality because that is what your parents had done. Yeah. And it's like, to then hold that and acknowledge that it's amazing to be able to unsilence yourself as an example, but then also to look back at that and that you did that to yourself, and then to look further back at the root of why you might have done that to yourself. And I agree, like, we're multifaceted people and there's so many things to think about. It's not just like mum and dad, but that is quite a significant thing that you experienced, which then with this liberation and wonderful second adolescence that's coming through, there does start to be like a point at which you wonder, why has it taken so long?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but one that's never going to have an answer, is it? And that's something that you have to live with and carry.
Or spend the rest of your life working out.
Yeah, but knowing that you're never going to work it out. Like, what even would an answer to that look like? It was the 14th of December in 1990 when this one particular thing happened and that changed everything. Like, even sometimes there are these traumatic events that do happen on a specific day, but I still think there are so many factors involved in it. It's a big question, and I think it's no surprise that this concept of second adolescence comes out of psychotherapy and counselling and psychologists and all different kinds of therapists that have, especially ones that work with LGBTQ plus people, that have noticed that this is what happens. This is what happens for people. And I guess as well, outside, if you just take out the purer form of romantic and sexual experiences that we've talked about so far, and think about what else happens in adolescence, which is you form friendships that you and connections that you are, like, more fully in charge of than previously. You know, they're not your parents or your siblings, which are the relationships that are kind of like forced on you by circumstance, or your neighbors or your teachers or your family friends, you know, like the kids who are the kids of your parents' friends. Like, you actually, when you're a teenager, you start making your own friendships, and often this causes conflict in houses because the parents are like, who are they going out with tonight? Like, who is this new gang? And so you kind of do that. And I did do that with some friends, but I do remember distinctly being very, very boundaried about it. And I remember, like, sometimes my friends would say, like, are you coming out tonight? Like, which would mean, like, going to someone's house and watching Dawson's Creek or something. It wasn't like going to a club. But, like, are you coming out tonight? And I'd be like, oh, no, I saw you all last night. I'm going to, like, stay in with my parents and we're going to have dinner. And some of my friends who hated their parents were like, what the fuck? Like, what are you on about? And I was just very, and I guess it was because I did genuinely want to be with my parents a lot. I liked them and my sister. But also, it's just funny that now I'm like, so I've become the friendships that I find and that I nurture have become like the core relationships of my life. And it's kind of completely flipped that, like, they are the center, and that's the thing to, like, that's the gravity for me.
It's interesting as well, because that means that your parents and what they represented to you and who they were had to sort of shatter in a way when you look back and realise what their thoughts were and what they did to your sister and also to you, especially because you had such a good relationship with them. It's almost, I'm not saying it's more painful, or I can't, I wouldn't make sweeping statements like that. Everyone's individual, but I had a very different experience. Like, I did not want to spend any time with my family. I felt trapped. I felt isolated. And that is also to do with, like, shame. And that was a lot to do with Catholicism. And lots of other complicated things that were happening in my family. But I ran from home and would have stayed out every night if I could. Like, I was forced to stay home and spend time with the family.
Yeah.
But also there was like, I guess, an extra layer of complication that was happening within me, which was like, I'm holding my sexuality. I know that I'm gay or queer, and I could connect that. But then I also hated it about myself in this really strange way. So I did a lot of negative things to my body, which includes alcohol and drugs. And those behaviours continued long into my 20s and in my early 30s. And that is a really complicated thing to look back on, and also makes me think about, you see lots of teenagers doing that in adolescence anyway, like playing and pushing with boundaries. But there's something about queer people where drugs and alcohol become crutches, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's also a common thing that's noticed in the literature.
Yeah, like Straight Jacket by Matt Todd speaks about it.
Yeah. So I want to move on to like the third and final section of this conversation, which is a bit about grief and mourning, because we've talked about the fact that you if you kind of like recognize this experience in your life, that you've actually had a second adolescence, and therefore you realize, okay, well, there was a first adolescence, but there were things that I didn't do there, or people that I didn't meet, or feelings that I suppressed, or wounds that got inflicted, that you kind of had this like grief for that period, for the things that I guess I'm specifically interested in the things that didn't happen. A grief for a relationship, like a Heartstopper relationship. I was talking to a therapist recently, and he was telling me how so many of his clients who were like 40 plus, let's say, especially older, I think 50s, so many of them met gay men say they're obsessed with Heartstopper, and they couldn't stop watching it, the Netflix TV show, and how it was like such a fantasy fulfillment for them, because they'd never like fallen in love at school and had an open crush at school with another boy, and so they just said like it brought on this huge wave of grief that they didn't have that at school. And in a way, it made me think of, I haven't seen Heartstopper, I don't think it's really for me, but it made me think of We Are Who We Are, which is a series by Luca Guadagnino, another TV series. And there's this amazing like queer friendship. It's quite confusing, but like they're just teenagers, and they're being silly, they're exploring. They're being messy, sexually, romantically. It's all over the place with gender as well. And it's really, really fun, and it's really, really interesting, and it's really beautifully made. And it made me think of, I think one of the things that I was attracted to, one of the reasons why I like really lapped up that show, all 8 episodes or whatever it was because it was giving me the experience of being a 15-year-old that I wasn't able to be, or that I didn't allow myself to be, because these kids just can't stop their feelings from driving their decisions and driving their behaviours, and I did stop mine, right? So it made me think of that grief, and how you can, like, TV in this case, these 2 examples can help you to I guess like open up that grief.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I have it makes me think about a lot of different things, and Heartstopper. But it made me think about, and I'm going to bring it in, but I watched Heated Rivalry.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a scene near the end, and whatever, spoiler alert. But the guy who's not out is coming out to his mum.
Right.
And he tells her, and he's like so afraid of coming out to her. And she says to him, I'm sorry that I never made it. I'm something like, I'm sorry that you felt like you couldn't come out to me.
Yeah.
And I burst into tears. And I was like, I wasn't expecting my reaction.
Yeah.
And I felt so like overwhelmed and confused. And it was just so simple that the mum wasn't like, I don't care, or it's fine by me, or like whatever, or like actually you're going to hell. The mum just completely took responsibility and said, I'm sorry that I didn't create a world where you felt like you could tell me.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind.
I mean, I haven't seen that, but like that's an amazing piece of like representational politics. Like that's important. I'm glad that exists. It is very fantasy. Like it is very Disney. And I know you know that. I know. And it's the same with Heartstopper. Like, I think, there's plenty of 15-year-old gay boys in school today who are absolutely not coming out and going out with other gay or bi boys at school in a cute way, you know? And so we have to acknowledge that these things are like a fantasy. But I think with this grief thing, my kind of final question really, and this is, I guess, a question for you as a poet and me as a writer, is do we need a word that describes that experience of grief or mourning that you have for... Because standard grief for something that didn't happen, because standard grief is for someone that you've lost. It's my dog just died. I'm now in mourning, right? I had this dog and now I don't have this dog anymore. And so this grief is a different kind of grief because it's something that never happened. And I'm wondering whether the word grief covers it, and if it and it might do. It's fine. I'm grieving my first adolescence that never really happened or something. But it's just kind of fun and playful. Yeah,
that's so interesting.
To think about a different word.
And when I think about it as grief, I think about queer grief, and I call it queer grief, and it links to queer time because it can happen at any moment in any linear experience, and what it's doing is taking you back to a moment. And then I also believe in the fact, and this is what the idea of second and third adolescence that we're talking about today is saying, that like you can claim it now, and actually you didn't have it when you were a teenager, or you didn't have it in your 20s, but you've got that connection now. So let's let you have your adolescence, your second adolescence, your third adolescence, your fourth, your fifth, whatever. The sky's the limit. And so that makes it different to grief, doesn't it? Because it's saying grieve what you could have had, but you've made that connection now and you can live it. Yeah. And it makes me think about queer futures as well, and like how it's really important to give ourselves space to access grief and collective grief. That's something that we've been talking about a lot with the book that we've written, but then that you turn it into something else. And that you grieve it, but that there's still opportunity and time and you can grab it now. I love the idea of a word. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Have you got any ideas?
You just said queer grief, so
queer grief,
is that your submission?
I guess so.
I was playing around with it. I don't have really great options, but we can workshop them. I was also thinking about whether what we're talking about is regret. That's just something to take away. Is that another word for...
I would say no for me.
I mean, it's bigger. It's not. It's obviously not exactly the word, but it's interesting to think about how regret, what components of this queer grief that we're talking about is classed as regret.
Yeah. Also, I know
that people say like, "Oh, don't have regrets. Like, be positive," and it's like that's true, but also I think people do experience regret, and you can name it.
I guess I don't think I have. I can't experience regret in relation to what I experienced to me, what happened to me, because I just could not access my gender.
No, I know, but for example, like you could say, like a person could say to you, like, do you regret doing the harm to yourself with alcohol and drugs because of this experience? And you might say,
I actually do. Yeah, I do.
So I think regret is there.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the word void because I was thinking about like something that's missing, and how to turn void into a kind of how to turn the word void into to have that quality of loss, like a void that wasn't there in the first place. I don't know. And then I started to think about like a void is like a hole, and then I thought about whole story, as in like history, but sounding like whole story. And then I went into the word, well, there was something missing, and it's in your history, so maybe it's like the feeling is mystery,
okay,
which sounds like mystery.
Interesting,
because you're never going to understand the full answer, but it's like something missing from your story, so mystery.
Interesting, and it's making me think about that maybe we don't use grief, but we talk about finding, so it's about a queer finding rather than a queer grieving, because what you're doing is you're finding these feelings and you're finding a future. There's also Homo Riot, which is on your t-shirt.
Oh yeah, Homo Riot.
Just call it that.
That's from Gilbert and George. I think I guess I'll wrap it up by saying that I'm not convinced by the queer finding word. I hear it, I like it, but I think it sounds to me like joy washing the actual thing that we're talking about, which is negative. It is sad.
Yeah.
It does have components of grief and regret and mourning and loss and pain. And we have to sit with that and acknowledge that. You can still be positive, obviously.
I don't think finding's necessarily positive, though.
Okay, no, it just didn't have that quality of like
fine.
the loss to it.
But
Because it's the opposite, you know.
To find something is to...
Yeah.
But I suppose in order to grieve it, you have to find it first.
Yeah. I mean, just like
anyway, it's
the
all of
remote
the words.
control down the side of the sofa. I think we should wrap up that conversation there, but that has been... that's been really great. I mean, I don't think I'm entering a third adolescence, but definitely middle age. Maybe a midlife crisis.
I don't know. I feel like I just have no idea what's going on with me and my age. I feel like some days I wake up and I feel like 80 and others I'm literally a teenager still. I wonder, like people say like this is your first time round, talking about like reincarnation and things like that.
Yes.
And some days I literally feel like it's my first time round and others I'm like, I'm done.
Well, a couple of things that we've got coming up, if we talk about that. So there is this new book that's out now.
Oh, yes.
That is called Sex, Clubs, Dissent. So whether you had a first adolescence or a second adolescence or a third adolescence, whoever you are in terms of adolescence, but you like looking at pictures of people being very sexy and kinky and political in clubs and nightlife in spaces, then this is the book for you. It's a big photo book.
And you wrote something for it, didn't you?
I wrote something for it. There's a bunch of essays in it. It's mainly photographs. It's edited by Amelia Abraham, and Amelia commissioned, I think, 8 different writers to write short essays. So I wrote something for it.
I think there's something in this that we need to do for the podcast.
Yeah, we should.
Deep dive.
We could do something. And we could interview her or about the book or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe we could do like a feature where we go into the sex, into the clubs, and into the dissent.
Yeah.
Just hear it now.
Yeah.
Great. Well, also, it's been really great having us do these weekly episodes. I'm really enjoying them. But we also want to hear what you want us to talk about. So if you've got any ideas for topics of conversation like this one today, Adam, thank you for bringing it, or you want us to cover a book or a film or an exhibition, then drop us a message. We're all ears.
Yeah, we're all ears. See you next week.
Bye.
The Logbooks is an Aunt Nell production.
It is hosted and produced by Tash Walker and Adam Smith.
The assistant producer is Mia Campbell. Music from Soundstripe.
Original artwork by Natalie Doto.
With thanks to the Dreamboats at Acast.
Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move. And knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Quick question. When was the last time a display ad changed your mind? Now think about the last time a friend told you about something they loved. Different feeling, right? That's how podcast advertising works. A host who's built real trust with their audience talks about your brand in their own words, in their own voice. It doesn't interrupt the experience. It's part of it. With Acast, you can access the world's largest podcast marketplace. Choose the right shows, the right audiences, the right format. Then watch the data tell you it worked. You're not buying impressions. You're buying influence. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.